Hello, good morning, Priyal. Am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Priyal, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hello. Has this? But, yeah, I think within 5 minutes we can start. Shivang sir. Yeah, good morning. Shivang sir, I will be requesting you either you please don't move in between the session, please.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, sir.
Are we waiting for more people, or can we go ahead and start?
We can wait for a few minutes.
Sure.
Still,
No problem.
so many people who are joining.
Sure.
Good
Good morning, sir. Rajesh here.
Good morning, Rajesh. How are you?
I'm fine, sir.
I think we can start within 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes. I think there are so many people who are
No
just
problem.
joining. Till now, we have got 31 participants. I think more students are joining in. And we have got some alumni as well. It's really happy to see all of you. Ankit Tungale is there.
Let me know whenever you want to start.
I think within 5 minutes we'll be having more than 100 participants.
Sure.
I
There is a
think it's
medical
better that
meeting
we
for 5
wait for
minutes.
5 minutes then.
Now we have got Amitava Chatterjee sir also joining from Cognizant. He's also one of our alumni. Very good morning, Amitava sir.
Hi, very good morning.
Very good morning, sir. So we have crossed 60. I'm going to request everyone to keep yourself in the mute mode. And Vivek sir, you can unmute yourself. So I think we can start. I will be just giving us a small welcome speech, welcome address to Vivek Srivastava sir. Actually, welcome sir. So we have today assembled here for the webinar on the topic Indian retail landscape and insiders perspective. So let me introduce you the today's speaker. He is Mr. Vivek Srivastava. He is one of our alumnus as well. And presently he is working as head of business development Benetton India. He has got more than 20 years of experience in retail management. So today he is going to share with you the vast experience that he is having in the retail management sector. And I'm 100% sure that it is going to be a really enriching experience for all the students and all the participants. And we look forward for such sessions from the side of the alumnus, because the experience that you people are going to share with the students is going to be the best thing that can happen in the life of a student. Thank you, sir. Then I'm handing over the session to Vivek Srivastava sir. Welcome, sir, for this particular session. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. John. One correction, I'm not that old. I'm just having 15 years of experience.
Okay.
Yeah. So do we want to start or we want to wait for other people?
We have crossed 75. We can start with the initial, then I think students will join.
Cool. So, very good morning to everybody. I am also one of the student of IRM, like all of you, and greetings to all the alumni who have also joined us. It's a great pleasure to meet and rather see all of you, because it's been ages that I got an opportunity to visit the campus personally. So yes, for me, it's indeed a great nostalgic moment to see all of you. I was also like you, yearning to learn more from our alumni, learn more from the experiences. So yes, it's a great platform and let's make the best use of it. A few requests. Let it not be a session where people on the back bench enjoy the relaxation. You can feel free to ask as many questions as you want, because the whole idea of me requesting for this session was to open your learning curve. So do ask as many questions as you want. Don't think whether my question is right or wrong, how other people will feel, whether the gravity of question is high or low. Question is a question because it came in your mind. So go ahead and ask whatever you want. I have kept the tone of presentation very, very simple so that it is easy for everybody to understand. I have not used any typical jargons which could be a culmination of my past experience. I've tried to keep as simple as possible in the simplest term so that all of us understand. And if you guys see some value coming out of it, what we can do is we can conduct one more session where I could take you to the intricacies of Indian retail. Sounds good?
Yes.
Is the presentation visible to everybody?
No. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, it is there.
Yes.
It is there.
So what we are saying is today we are going to discuss about how retail in India is shaping up. So I would request all of you to unmute yourself and first tell me this. As I said, no right, no wrongs, go ahead and shoot.
Or a point where one can directly touch the customer.
Okay. Go ahead, guys. Don't feel shy. It's your session.
So retail means to get back.
Sorry?
To get back.
To get bags.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Any other thoughts? Rajesh, would you like to add? Rajesh is one of our accomplished alumni who has also graciously joined us.
Retail means semi-wholesale.
Semi what?
Semi-wholesale.
Okay. You want to explain a bit?
The activity of selling goods to consumer.
So for me, it will be like any exchange of goods or services to the end user. That is retail.
Perfect. Anybody else would like to contribute to this? So in a very, very simple and lucid language, this is what retail is for me. When I don't wholesale or when I don't resell a particular commodity, rather I sell in a very small quantity, that is what retail is all about. We can have fancy definitions, as many definitions as you want, but the crux of it is whatever you sell.
ये कैसे हो गया?
In a very simple manner, whatever goods you are selling, which is not used for a bulk purpose, which means it will not be resold to somebody else, but will be sold in very small quantities, that is retail. Should we go ahead?
Yes, yes.
Any queries or any submissions?
Please go ahead, please.
So now let's look at how Indian retail is becoming so promising and what kind of numbers are we looking at. So as on 2018, we were looking at a $950 billion US size of this Indian market, which was growing by 13%. And with the BCG estimate, the Boston Consulting Group, it is poised to go to 1.1 trillion by 2020, which is the year we are sitting now. Now with Corona impact, it might get subsided. But then 1.1 trillion itself is a large amount to make India one of the most promising market of the world. You'll also appreciate that the way Indian e-commerce is shaping up, it is again ruling the world. All the leading e-commerce companies are yearning to make a stop in India, whether it's Amazon, whether it is Alibaba, and the likes of it. We are growing at the rate of 31%, and this is only growing in the most commensurate way, so that people of India will really look forward to see this kind of growth in terms of employment, in terms of additional rising income, and also new doors for production and manufacturing. Now the next interesting piece is the offline retail. Offline retail is nothing but the brick and mortar retail, which you see the stores in its physical form. This itself is expected to increase by a good 10 to 12,000 crores in financial year 2020. A brief overview how the market is looking at. Is the slide visible to all?
Yes, yes, it is.
Or do I increase the font size?
Yeah, you can.
So any guesses, guys? What are the different categories of retail we are operating on as a market? Anyone can go for it. What are the broad categories of retail that you see in India, which is now shaping up? What are the different items that we sell or retail?
Even screen, apparel and footwear, consumer durables and IT also.
Yeah. So if you primarily look at it, there are a couple of segments where Indian retail is operating on. First is apparel and footwear, followed by consumer durables and IT. When we say consumer durable, I think the meaning is very clear. It's the white goods, your fridge, washing machine, TV, and so on and so forth. IT is the computer industry. Then we have jewelry, which is again one of the most burgeoning sector. Now, the very interesting split what is happening in Indian retail is, you'll also find a very good balance between unorganized and organized retail. I'll definitely come to it, what exactly is unorganized and organized, and I would love to hear your thoughts also. We have health and entertainment, home decor and furnishings. We have beauty and personal care. And if you look at the pie chart which I have made, you will see a typical percentage contribution of these categories into the overall retail market. We are also looking at how online retail in India is shaping up. What is the Indian e-commerce market looking like? And which is followed by the government initiatives. As you all are aware, Mr. Modi is driving the initiative of Digital India, which is basically empowering each and every Indian to go digital in terms of whether it is m-commerce, e-commerce, and in terms of digital payment. This itself is making India one of the most vibrant and one of the most attractive market across the world. Paytm itself is one of the most stunning example in terms of a startup becoming a unicorn, which has created great value for the Indian consumers as well as made our life so simple that now you will see and appreciate the fact that the physical currency itself is now taking a backseat and digital currency is coming into the picture. Now this particular initiative, though the token could be small when you pay from a Paytm or a net or a NFC, but then this is again revolutionizing the Indian retail market. So before I go to the next slide, there are two sides of the coin which retail normally operates. You might have heard, being an MBA student, that there is something called organized retail, there is something called unorganized retail. Anyone want to jump in and give me some download about it? What exactly do we mean by unorganized and organized retail? Make a guess, don't feel shy about it.
One which is accounted is organized and one which is not accounted is unorganized.
Okay, can you elaborate a bit?
Like a person selling on the footpath is an unorganized one. But the same which is like build, a transaction that is built is an organized one. Which comes into the system is an organized one.
Perfect. So pretty close to the definition of it. Anybody else want to give a shot? Go ahead, guys. Don't hold yourself. There is no right, no wrong. It's a learning session for me and for you. We'll learn from each other's experience.
Students, any one of you can answer.
No problem.
Why don't you announce some prizes?
Prize is a visit to Benetton India. Whenever you guys are in Delhi, I will ensure that you meet the entire Benetton team and also get good discounts on my products.
So I think now people will pop up saying something.
So this is called incentivizing in typical sales language, which I tried to do.
So
Now let's see whether my incentive works or not.
So I suppose I have earned my vouchers.
Of course, yes. So go ahead. Now try claiming your incentive and give me an answer on organized and unorganized, if anybody wants to go for it. I think we are all familiar with the word organized and unorganized, right? The only addition what I am doing is retail. Now try to dissect it. No problems. Let's see that.
Can I give some more input?
Sorry?
May I give you some more input on this?
Yes, please. Most welcome.
Like another example which I could have quote is that the jewelry section in India, or I should say in Jaipur. So big jewelers who are working in Jaipur are making transactions on the word. Like more, it's like a deal which is being like made, but people are sitting and they're not writing anything.
Sure.
So that jewelry part is unorganized. But if Tanishq is selling some jewelry, it is in organized sector.
Perfect. So let's look at the definition.
Good morning.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sir, actually what I feel is organized retailing refers to those kind of activities which are undertaken by licensed retailers, whereas unorganized retailers, they are they are working at a low level, or the basic traditional retailing wherein they are not very organized in nature, and they are not they don't have a need of a lot of licenses and all. So
Perfect.
that is the basic difference, but otherwise there are a lot of differences in terms of their working, the kind of employees they have in terms of knowledge, skilled and unskilled.
Okay. So let's again throw a question. This gives you a 68% off on Benetton. Now a Kirana store next to your society or your residence is organized or unorganized?
Unorganized.
He's an organized one.
So debate starts. One organized, one unorganized.
At least
Now I can't split the voucher into two. I have just one voucher. So you guys have to figure out what is the right answer.
Organized.
A Kirana store next to your residence or society is an organized retail or an unorganized retail?
Unorganized.
And why is that?
So maybe because here the sales which they are doing over here, they are not listed under any companies like or any government documentation. So maybe they are classified as unorganized.
But
so they don't have proper license.
From an organized sector.
Sorry?
He is organized because he's buying from an organized sector. His raw material is from the organized sector. Like he's selling a shampoo of ITC or anything, any company. So he's buying it from an organized sector. So he's like partially organized, but on like I should say consumer, it's unorganized.
So very well said. Now just help me with one more problem which I am facing now. There is this vendor who sits just across the street and he sells Maggie on his push cart. Will that be an organized retail or unorganized retail? Maggie, as we know, it's a Nestle product, obviously coming from the one of the largest FMCG guy. So is that an organized sale or unorganized retail?
Unorganized sale.
Unorganized, sir.
Unorganized.
Why now he's selling Maggie? He was selling shampoo and he was organized, right?
But no, like, even that time he was unorganized.
That was also unorganized.
Cool. So I won't puzzle you anymore.
If he's contributing directly to the GDP, he's in organized.
Perfect. Let's look at some very interesting pointers which clearly differentiates between organized. So first, let's spend some moment. I have also put in two pictures which will give you a classic example what is unorganized and organized retail. When you talk about an unorganized retail, you will typically imagine a very small area with limited assortment. Consumer wouldn't have too much of choices. It's basically what we used to buy maybe around 15 to 20 years back, when there was this one kirana store, stock what he wants, and there was no consumer story attached to it, which basically means there is no pull from the consumer side. It's only the push from the retailer side. There was no consumer demand, explicit consumer demand, which will make him do the assortment the way a consumer would like it to be. But it was more what he is getting at a rock bottom price is something which he was supplying. So the assortment was very limited. The motive was totally profit driven. Not that organized retail doesn't yearn for profit, but there is a slight difference. In terms of infrastructure, any idea why am I writing poor infrastructure in unorganized retail? What could be a poor infrastructure example?
No SAP implementation.
Sorry?
SAP is not there.
Okay.
So this
Sir, it will be a
maybe a
combination
very
of
small pan ki 30.
So let's make.
Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Sir, actually this poor infrastructure can be because of the product placements. Because in the unorganized retail, the product placement cannot be very much organized.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So whenever you go for any kind of shopping, you really want let there be a car parking or at least a bike parking, so that at least when you shop, you are pretty much safe, that at least my vehicle is safely parked. Do you want a clear queue manager so that when you shop, you are very, very sorted that whatever am I buying is safe and sound and coming from a reliable source? Have I invested enough on the customer safety and security by employing due amount of fire safety equipments? This could be some few examples, but prima facie, if you look at those two pictures which is mentioned here, you'll clearly make out a safe, hygienic, clean, beautiful environment is something which organized retail will provide you. Unorganized retail is very functional. All it will say is, here's the goods, go ahead and shop if you want. But unlike when you actually imagine yourself going to a supermarket or a hypermarket with an empty shopping trolley, if you have got a list from your mom or wife, as the case may be, there are good number of chances when you go in a hypermarket or a supermarket, you will end up buying at least 10 to 15% more to what you had actually planned to. Because the way they have done their displays, the way they have made the entire shelving arrangement, the way they have positioned their product strategically, you'll always find milk and bread together. You'll find all the related things together wherein your unconscious mind will make you conscious that go ahead and buy this product also. So there is a lot of science when we design our shelvings, when we design our allays, when we also put the products. That is called a good planning in terms of organized retail, and the same exactly gets a miss in unorganized retail. Now, as somebody said, SAP is not there. SAP may not be affordable to everybody, but at the same time, what we definitely can appreciate is the lack of modern technological interventions, which will mean, do they give a computerized receipt every time I shop? Yes, maybe. But in most of the cases, the answer could be a big no. Have they invested enough so as to ensure consumer delight, so as to get the eye on what consumers are buying? The next point would be, as somebody rightly said, they could be unlicensed, they could be unregistered, they might be evading taxes also. That is the biggest challenge. So any guesses, what is the number of percentage of taxpayer population in India? What percentage of Indian population pay taxes?
It is less than 2%.
Okay.
Yeah, roughly around 3%.
Any other guess? It's almost 1% of Indian population which actually pays taxes around the entire country. And most of it, the unorganized players since they wouldn't generate a GST, they wouldn't enroll themselves into the GST regime or any kind of taxation, whether it is income tax or a business tax, they would simply avoid it so as to cause a great loss to the exchequer, thereby denting the Indian economy further. Here, typical examples could be the Haat, mandis, street food outlets, your kirana stores, and the convenience stores. Just the opposite of this, what we just discussed, will constitute the organized retail. They are licensed, they are registered. Stock is classified and segregated, which we just discussed, which basically means there is a conscious thought, there is a conscious science in devising the planogram. You're good with planogram, right? What is planogram? Do all know what is a planogram?
So please explain it to the students, please. Alumni may be knowing. Please explain it to the students.
Okay. So planogram is the basic layout of a store. I wouldn't take you to the technical side of it. In a very simple manner, when, for example, just imagine a bare shell or a completely empty store. Now, if you want to make a convenience store which will sell all the FMCG goods, you will have to have some certain thoughts behind it. How should I plan? How much should I plan? And where and how this particular category should be placed? Sum total of all these activities put together on a piece of paper is called a planogram, which basically tells you the exact position of specific category, what kind of percentage contribution each category should do in the overall sales, basis which what kind of shelf space a particular category should get. That is a typical planogram for you. There is specific technical definition which I wouldn't want to get into because that may be slightly difficult to comprehend at this stage. But for a very simple thing, it's the layout planning of a store wherein you use a science, use some maths to decide which category should be displayed where and what kind of science should I follow. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Essentially, in all the organized retail, the billing has to be through POS, which is point of sales with a computerized receipt, which basically means each and every sale, whether it is a razor or whether it is 1 lakh rupee sale, each and every sale has to be duly accounted for. There has to be a receipt given to the consumer. And most importantly, the organized retail accepts liability for what they are selling. Unlike an organized player for whom once they have sold, it's the company's responsibility to do all the after sale service or all handling all the complaints. But in terms of organized retail, for example, if let me talk about my company only. My company's name is United Colors of Benetton. We are into apparels. So when I say that I take responsibility, which basically means if you have bought a t-shirt from me worth 4,000 rupees, I take personal liability in a sense. When I, being a company, I take a liability to ensure that this product is defect free. It has been checked at least 16 to 17 times from different channels. We have sourced the best quality of fabric so that it doesn't harm your skin. We also ensure that it meets all the international quality standards. Now, in an unlikely event of you feeling any difference to what I just said, you are most welcome to walk into any of our store, get it replaced free of cost with no question asked. So that's the commitment what a typical organized retail, or rather I say organized ethical retailer, will provide to his consumers. As I said, after sales service and consumer delight, this happens to be the key pillar of organized retail. Unorganized retail, even if, for example, there are millions, for example, there is a Satya Electronics, for just hypothetical name, or Prithvi Electronics. Once they sell, all they would tell you, and I'm sure you would be able to relate to all of your consumer durable purchase. Once they have sold, there would be few who will definitely be concerned about their consumers, but in all likelihood, you will definitely relate that they say, please call the consumer care of that particular company. We don't have any role to play here. But then if you do the same thing to an organized retailer, chances are they will promptly help you out, or else they will definitely ask the company to do the needful for you. Any guesses why this thing is happening in the organized retail? Why are they so concerned about their image, consumer delight, after sales service?
Students, you will have to answer.
Just make a guess. Why are they so bothered about it? What will they get in return?
Loyal customers.
Okay, good point.
So their goodwill will increase.
They have a larger geographical reach, so they want
Can
to
you
make
speak
sure
a bit louder, please?
they have a large geographical lead,
Okay.
geographical spread. So like they have a big thought in mind कि मुझे पूरा पूरे country में या पूरे world में बेचना है माल, not only
Okay.
one place.
Okay.
Whereas the unorganized one
Publicity.
sells.
So they
Unorganized तो अपनी vicinity में बेचता है सिर्फ.
For advertisement, publicity.
What about brand
Okay.
image? Think in that line as well.
The CRM, this could be an activity for customer relationship management. Maybe turning the good customers into best customers or gold
Perfect.
customers into platinum customers.
Amazing. Seems you are a regular shopper. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
all of you are absolutely right. Any other points somebody wants to add?
No one, please continue.
So all of you are right in some or the other manner. Yes, so the prima facie motive behind all these activity is to build a brand equity. That is the fundamental premise in any business, whether it is retail or it is wholesale or any other business. The fundamental part or fundamental responsibility of any business is to create an equity in consumers' mind that yes, you can trust me. That is what drives all the decisions, whether it is consumer relationship management, brand loyalty, advertisement, consumer acquisition, or so on and so forth. The fundamental premise is how do I drive that equity in consumers' mind that yes, whenever you need me, I am there. That is the key thought or central thought behind all such activities, that if they just do advertising or if they just run some CRM programs which will be so mechanical that okay, you bought 10 things from me, here are your 2 points. That is very mechanical. That CRM thing has to go beyond that. So when CRM, R stands for relationship, right? That R basically says that you care for me. It's not just allotment of some points into your system or giving me some freebies. It is also that whenever I need you as a consumer, my company is always ready to help me out. That's the whole premise here. Are we good till here? Any doubts, any questions from the last 2 slides? Should we go ahead?
Yeah, please proceed.
So let's see why everybody, every American, Brit, French, everybody is so gung-ho about Indian, in fact Chinese for that matter. Why are they so interested about Indian retail? We are a country with world's largest, youngest population. Half of our country is under the age of 25. Almost 2/3 are less than 35. Now, if you have observed what has happened to Italy during Corona, their 50% population is more than 60 years of age. Same with Japan. Now, this is the key challenge with this kind of so-called developed countries are facing in. Their young population who can be translated as a working population also, they are struggling with their requirement of workforce, basis which this entire migration theory or migration to the US, to the Canada, to France, or so on and so forth is working out so well. Canada wants to recruit 3.5 lakh people across the world, which is called the migration, the permanent residency program or the PR program. Such is the grave situation. Now that particular thing is an asset in India. Only thing or the only challenge what we face in India is how do you utilize it? Having a youngest population is one thing, and how do you effectively utilize is another thing. So that is a key challenge for the Indian government to effectively use this position of strength. At the same time, it presents a huge opportunity for all the companies across the world to make India as their consumption center. Hence, Indian retail, if you see, there are thousands of brands which are entering every year, whether it is Indian brand, foreign brand, everybody wants to take a pie from the Indian retail market. Now, I want you guys to answer the second point. Easy consumer credit and access to finance. What do we understand by this? I'm sure your finance professors must have discussed this particular thing with you. Do we have students from all the semesters or only the final ones?
We have students from all the semesters.
Cool. So go ahead, guys. What do you mean by the second point?
We have rather discussed these points in a retail class also, ma'am.
Sure. Go ahead.
So they should be able to answer.
Feel free, guys. There's no right, no wrong.
Yeah, they're having that hesitation whether they are going to make the right answer or not.
You're talking to one senior student only. You're not talking to any professor of any big B school and all. I am just like you, and this is something, whatever little I knew about Indian retail, I have just tried to factor in. So go ahead, count me as one of student who has grown little old. That's the only difference what I and you have. So go ahead and answer.
Sir, in the Indian market, we have access to the credit cards, and we are also having the options of EMIs. So that is how we are having a facility of availing finance or availing credit. And this is how Indian retail is unique to the foreign countries too.
Sure, that's a great answer, and pretty much what I also meant to say. Anybody else want to share some thoughts? So we teach retail also these days, is it?
Yes, sir.
Amazing. Okay. Cool. So no problems. So what easy consumer credit and access to finance means, now you would have seen whenever you walk to any of the stores, irrespective of category, whether it is consumer durable or a bike store or for that matter, a car showroom also, the moment you enter, you will find a small desk on your left-hand side, which will say Bajaj Consumer, FinServe or something like that. It basically tells you, dude, don't worry. If you don't have money, I have the solution for you. So a car which was costing me, let's say 15 lakh rupee, is now available in the other way for 35,000 rupee of EMI. So the entire focus of the cost is moving from the wholesome cost to just the EMI part of it. They want the consumer to think, boss, please worry about how will you pay 35,000 per month. Don't worry about that 15 lakh thing that I will take care of. So when a consumer starts thinking this way, for example, if I were to ask you, will you buy a 50,000 worth of LED TV or the latest model of TV or not? By giving a down payment. Down payment meaning giving cash right up front. You will think twice, because then you have to go break your bank and then bring me fast cash of 50,000 rupees. But if I just say, swipe your card, I will not charge any interest on your credit card. All I'm going to do is just charge you 2.5% finance charges as a registration fee or blah and blah. You immediately say, oh, I need to pay only 2,000 rupees a month, and then this 50 inches LED will be mine. So they are combining two things. First, they're trying to catch that ever-growing aspiration thanks to the cable TV and internet. Everybody wants to look and feel rich. Whether they have the income or not, that's secondary. But the desire to look, feel, behave rich, or at least an evolved rich, is something which is driving the entire Indian consumerism. Do you guys agree?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So when you present this opportunity that here is the chance to catch up on your aspiration, here is your opportunity to grab that prized asset through which you can make your neighbor envy by just paying things in EMI or swiping your credit card without any charge. You are making a perfect marriage of aspiration and affordability. That is what is happening in this second point. What is DINK family? DINK?
So dual income and no kids families.
Perfect. What could be the advantage of having that?
So there would not be
apart
higher
from
expenditure on
the basic shouting and crying of kid, what else could be the advantages?
The finishing of liability.
Sorry?
Finishing off of the liability.
How?
Like if no kids, no schools and nothing, and no payments for like recreational activity, education for the kids, and just spending on own self.
Perfect. So what's your good name?
Sir, I am Ankit Tunkale, batch 0608.
Okay. So Ankit made a very valid point. If you don't have liabilities, so basically what do you have? You have a disposable income in your hand, which basically allows me to again count you as one of the wealthy consumer who will further come back to me and buy more and more things, because I don't have to pay school fee, I don't have to pay XYZ fee, I don't have to spend on the clothing, so on and so forth. And with the limited liability and the higher income, the chances of me spending more on my discretionary spend, all of you are cool with disposable income and discretionary spends? Guys, here's your chance. Go ahead and ask meaning of these things, so that, because once, let me tell you one very important thing. Once you graduate from this college, or for that matter, any college, the real battlefield will not give you chance to ask questions. They will ask you to implement it. So learn as many things as you can in these 2 years of time by reading journals, going to lectures, attending webinars, whatever source of learning that you prefer. But go prepared in the battlefield, otherwise it will be very tough. Because in the corporate world, all you have to do is perform. There are very few companies who will allow you to first get good training, understand yourself, and then blah, blah, blah. All they say is, boss, I'm paying you, I need you to deliver results. For that, it's very, very important that my fundamentals about what am I saying, what does it mean, what will it contribute to, is very, very clear in my mind. So if you feel, and this session is only for you, this is not a Gyan session, this is not something where it has to be a one-way traffic from my side. Each and every word, which could be anything, nothing is silly, nothing is intelligent. A question remains a question. If you find anything which still sounds like a jargon, I've tried my best to keep things simpler, but even if I have not been able to do that, please go ahead and ask. Because this will shape up your thinking. Whenever you read, whenever you participate in any debate or enter into corporate world also, this will definitely help you. Second is the internet users. I'm sure you would have seen your rickshawala, your barber, any person who so-called belongs to the lower strata of the society has a mobile phone. And in all likelihood, he chats on WhatsApp. In all likelihood, he has a Facebook. Now this entire game has resulted in 627 million of internet users. That also as on 2019. I couldn't gather the data of 2020. This is a 18% growth from 2018. And this has penetrated 40% in Indian population. It is one of the world's fastest growing internet population, which has got mobile in hand. And you will be amazed to know, out of the 627 users, half of them are rural and half of them are urban. These users have accessed internet at least once in every 30 days. That is the definition of active user in internet industry. So going forward, these internet users will be the real customers, or rather a chunk of real customers for every Indian organization. Because now, do you think Facebook is more popular or Instagram is more popular for a marketer? In terms of e-commerce or pushing ads?
Instagram is
Instagram.
more popular.
And why do you think so?
So because most of the youth population uses Instagram more than the Facebook. So Instagram is a better platform for the marketers.
So, but why? Why Instagram? End of the day, both are belonging to the same company.
So
but why people are preferring Instagram more than the Facebook?
So because Instagram has more engagement from youth generation. So any company's major target population would be youth. So
okay,
this would be the Instagram would have their targeted audience. That is why Instagram is the better platform for the marketers.
Perfect. So bang on. So if you look at it, Facebook versus Instagram. Instagram is mine. It's more personalized. It's all about me. It's me who is controlling the overall content. It's me who selects what should come to me. I decide my preferences, I decide my choices, and I drive my consumer behavior. Unlike, for example, if you look at the sorry, I'm digressing a bit, but I think it could be of interest to you. If you look at the way Facebook advertising is done, they just filter out a couple of demographic changes that I would like to target people who are under 25 years. I would like to target whose hobbies are so and so. But in Instagram, basis the photos that you are posting in, or the sites you are visiting in, or the feeds you are looking at, that tells you what are you interested on as a person and not as a group. For me, that personalized advertising is something which is now gaining waves, and going forward, the entire marketing budget will finally shift to the digital spends only, and very few, maybe 10 to 20% is what my guess is, will move to typical traditional mode of advertising. Any questions? Okay. The last point here is the Digital India, e-commerce and the m-commerce, which we just discussed. Here comes the real stuff. Just go through it and start telling me what do you understand by each of them, then we can have a debate or discussion on that. I have also added photos for you so that the answering becomes easier for you. Who wants to go first? What is EBO?
Exclusive brand showrooms, exclusive brand outlets.
Okay, perfect. Why is it called EBO? Why there is a word exclusive in that?
Because as shown in the image, you have put the image of UCB showroom. So it is very much understandable that exclusive showroom keeps the products of some one exclusive brand only.
Perfect.
Single brand outlet.
Sorry?
This is the other name of single brand outlet.
Perfect. So EBO is as I think Ankit said, right? Siddharth. So yes, so Siddharth rightly said it's the exclusive brand outlets. It basically defines the imagery of a specific brand. It's a showcase of that brand's philosophy to the consumer, and the EBO is the best presentation of what the brand stands for. It doesn't stock any other brand's product. It only sells, for example, the picture what you are seeing is United Colors of Benetton. All you will see inside that particular store is the product which is manufactured and sold by UCB only. Second is MBO. What could be an MBO?
Multi-brand outlet.
Perfect. So as the word itself suggests, it's a multi-brand outlet. The picture would definitely take you back to the memory lane where this is the way we used to shop for our apparels maybe 15, 20 years back. You would see a complete wall of full packed up with all sorts of boxes, all sorts of brands. You will request for a specific box to be brought in. You will see the stuff, again it will be packed. That's how typical MBO environment used to be. But now you'll be happy to know MBO is some of the MBOs for that matter. For example, if anybody is from Gujarat, you will see the MBO called Jade Blue. Jade Blue can give competition to any of the organized retail in terms of the way they have positioned their stores. So though they are MBOs, but then the best part of Indian retail is they're learning very fast. They try to catch up so fast with their EBO counterpart that in terms of sheer experience, they present the same kind of environment to a consumer. Next is supermarket. Any examples of supermarkets? Or what is a supermarket? Why is it not a hypermarket?
Reliance Fresh could be an example, sir.
Of super or hyper?
Supermarket.
Okay. Why is it not called a hypermarket? What could be the differentiation?
Because the Reliance Fresh is basically involved in the basic and daily necessities items. We can say the groceries and all. That's why they are known as supermarkets.
Okay.
And you can find every type of your daily needs and basic necessity products.
Perfect.
The hypermarkets also includes like what we said, consumer discretionary goods also. Whereas supermarket does not include all that. Supermarket is like what all you need daily. Like it won't contain fridge and televisions and this washing machines in supermarket. But hypermarket should be having all those things also.
Perfect. So you guys
I want to ask something. Can we say in other words that supermarkets are the one which caters only FMCG goods?
Not really. It could stock different, but prima facie, that will be the tone and the tenure of the way they would suggest their market. So they will have FMCG, they will have fruits and vegetables, they will have their daily necessities. They might have a very small component of other stuff, but prima facie, it will be F&B and the FMCG.
Sir, can I give some input?
Yes,
Rajesh?
please.
See, the supermarket, hypermarket, all this, it's a combination of 2-3 factors. That is location of the store, size of the store, and the kind of assortment you carry. So in India, hypermarket definition is different from USA standard. So in India, any store which is above 10,000 or 12,000 square feet comes under hypermarket. And supermarket is generally 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. So it can, so that is the basic definition for grocery outlets.
The hypermarket is a combination of supermarket and a department store.
See, it's all different
Other
format.
than the difference in size between
Department market itself is a different format.
Yeah. So it's a combination of product lines you carry. The size of the store is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So hypermarket will be always above 12,000 square feet.
So a slight correction here. In India, if you see all the hypermarkets, so there are the few players which are into hypermarket business are, one is Spar, then Big Bazaar, Spencer Retail, and so on and so forth. Supermarket, you will see Reliance Fresh as the one of the most significant player in the business. So as Rajesh rightly said, the key difference is in the size of the market. A hypermarket will definitely provide you with much larger variety. It will definitely have the component of your supermarket. In addition to that, it will also have consumer durable, huge range of consumer durable. It will have luggage. It will have other white goods. For example, if you go to a large more hypermarket, you might find a good range of white goods as well. For example, Big Bazaar, Future Group, they have their own brand called Koryo, Koryo, which they sell from their hypermarkets also. In all likelihood, in India, hypermarkets are above 50,000 square feet. Anything which is less than that, around 10 to 15,000 square feet, is now falling under supermarket bucket. Next classification is the convenience store. This is nothing but your next door neighbor who is selling the basic stuff, pretty much falling into the unorganized retail part. But the big change what is happening in this particular store space is now these online retailers like Grofers or Big Basket. You guys have heard of these two terms, right?
Yes, sir.
Grofers and Big Basket. Now what at a strategic level, what these guys are doing is they are also now trying to tie up with all those Kirana stores and upping the battle and saying that, boss, you also need to compete with the organized retail. They are completely changing their layout, introducing technology to the way they used to do business. So more and more convenience stores / Kirana stores are now becoming part of organized retail thanks to Big Basket and Grofers. So that's a new change which is happening now. So now we talk about the different retail channels. We pretty much discussed the first two, brick and mortar offline retail, which is the physical store, what you guys see across all the malls and high street. E-commerce is all the sale that you do in the online platform. Third thing is omni-channel. Any idea about what could be omni-channel, especially to the existing students? Have you guys heard of this term?
I think Siddharth is the only person who want to give any answer.
Go ahead, Siddharth.
Yes, sir. Sir, omnichannel can we can say that omnichannel can be a combination of both brick and mortar and e-commerce channels. Consumers has all the options whether to buy from an offline store or whether to buy from an online website.
Sure. Anybody else wants to go for it? In all likelihood, people who are interested in retail, once they cross their education, they will definitely find themselves getting engaged in omni-channel, because this has already become a buzzword in Indian retail. But going forward, this is something which will be now powering the entire consumption space. So should I go ahead, or anybody wants to contribute?
No, you can go ahead. Yeah,
See,
yes,
omni-channel. Sorry, somebody saying something?
Sir, omni-channel is basically where the organization try cross-channel ways to advertise their products, and I love different different channels to advertise and promote their products in order to increase them to reach the masses in a shorter period of time and to get the better feedback.
Yeah. So in very simple words, omni-channel is the marriage between the first two, offline and online. It's called omni. It basically aims to deliver similar shopping experience as if you're buying from an offline. So a very simple example what I would give, you know Arvind Brands, which is the brand behind Aero, US Polo, Flying Machine, or Gap, Tommy, CK. The group behind it is Arvind Brands. What they beautifully do, and for that matter everybody does, but I'm just giving you an example of Arvind. There is this shopping website called now.com, NNOW.com. You must have shopped from that site sooner or later. Now if you shop something on that site and you say that I needed this particular garment in the evening only because I have to go for a party, but you will appreciate that delivery from Bangalore or from any of their distribution channel will take 2 to 3 days minimum. What they offer you is pay online, take the delivery offline, which basically means if, for example, if I live in Gurgaon and the nearest mall to me is Ambience Mall, what they are telling me is go ahead and make the purchase on now.com, go to my physical store at Ambience Mall, pick up the same stuff without paying anything additional. So they are trying to marry these two concepts of brick and mortar and online. You made payment somewhere else, you collected a delivery somewhere else. They are also giving you an option that if you can't come in, the offline store, which didn't get the sale also, will have it delivered to your doorstep in the exceptional circumstances. So they are trying to bridge the divide between offline and online by beautifully marrying the basic core concepts of consumerism, that the shopping experience should remain consistent throughout the journey, whether it is online or offline, in terms of experience, in terms of delivery. Good with it?
Yes.
Now, here comes some other interesting stuff. There are 4 buckets of retailing that happens. First is low margin, high volume. Though I didn't want to put the examples, I wanted you to guess, but nevertheless, Pantaloon, Westside, Big Bazaar, Vishal Mega Mart. These kind of business are basically the departmental stores, but we were discussing this just a few minutes back. Now, these particular business are generating high footfalls, and hence they are mall's favorite also. So, but they have the low margins, but they generate huge volume. So for them, it's not that how pricey a product should be. It's that how many people are coming into their stores so that they are able to make up for the lost margin in terms of low price of products. That's how the core strategy of all these departmental stores typically works on. Then there are players like Benetton and the luxury retail, wherein the margins are high but volume is low. It's a typical consumer cycle. You will appreciate that if the product prices are high, you will definitely end up buying less. But then because margins are high, the loss of volume gets compensated by the margin that one makes. That's how this particular thing works out. High margin, high volume. I have put Fab India here. Any idea why do I put Fab India?
Answer, please.
No problem. If you happen to see any of the Fab India Experience Center, now Fab India has come up with something called Experience Center, which are 10,000 and plus stores which sells home furnishings, saris, apparels, organic India products, and the usual stuff. And they also have a cafe called Fab Cafe. Their location strategy is they will never occupy anything which is present on the main high street, but they will go into a different corner and create a market for themselves. So by doing that, they reduce their real estate cost significantly. Their product, since I have worked with that company as well, their product are very high in quality, much in demand. Once you are a Fab India consumer, there are chances you will never go and buy somewhere else if you are buying that particular category. And the margin what they buy, margin what they sell at is absolutely high, significant, so as to make a business high margin, high volume. The last is low margin, low volume. Very few retailers operate. This is typically the outlet business model. It's a typical recipe for disaster, because if both are low, then you are destined to doom. What are the major components of retail business? Now we are getting slightly deeper into how retail works. Is the slide visible to you?
Yes.
Real estate, that's your place of business. Human resource, people who are working for your business. SCM is the supply chain management, through which who feeds your business. Marketing, who brings the consumer to business, and the operations team who runs the show. This is the typical 5-pillar based approach in retail industry. That's how you work. I handle the real estate portfolio of Bannetor India, so I will slightly talk about it, maybe in detail. This is how the real estate expansion looks like. So when you look at it, this is a brick and mortar model. We prima facie, we operate in 4 different verticals: malls, high streets, airports, and outlets. Any questions still here?
So, how would you differentiate high streets and the outlets? I would like to know.
Sure. So these are the different verticals. When you say high street, this is predominantly the most popular road of that particular area. For example, in Jaipur, it could be MI Road. In Delhi, it could be South Extension, Connaught Place, and so on and so forth. Outlet, if you guys are familiar with, outlet is something which a typical Mahipalpur of Delhi would look like. That is my liquidation channel. Now, what is a liquidation channel? Whatever has been my excess inventory or the stock which has seen more than one season, I cannot be selling the same stuff into my fresh stores. Hence, this has to be liquidated. And the channel through which it is liquidated is called liquidation channel, or in the normal words, it's called factory outlets. So these are the 4 different verticals through which any brand expands in the real estate, in the retail market. Any doubts?
No, sir.
In terms of the business model, now make a guess, what are these 3 business models? Again, when you pass out of the college, and if you happen to be into retail, this is something which you will come across on a daily basis. Because every bucket has got a different profitability story, a different real estate story, and a different consumerism story.
Is it come in, come out, come in, first out, first in, first out?
Sir, I guess it is company operated, company owned and company operated.
Yeah,
company owned, franchisee operated, and franchisee owned and franchisee operated.
Absolutely. So there are 3 buckets through which any retail model in India works, and perhaps across the world also. CO or COCO model is called company owned, company operated. Here the entire investment. Now, I don't know whether I'm running out of time or not, but if you want, I can explain in a bit detail. Dr. John, do we have time, or we are?
Yeah, you have, please.
So company owned, company operated is something wherein the entire CapEx and OpEx, CapEx is capital expenditure, OpEx is operating expenses, belongs to company, all the investment in furniture, fixture, assets, inventory, or stock is done by the company. Profitability directly comes to the company. Hence, it is called company owned, company operated. The second bucket is COFO, or company owned, franchisee operated. Here, basically, the real estate is owned by the company. When I say owned, it doesn't mean I have bought it. It means I have leased it. Leased meaning I have taken it on rent. So the landlord will sign the lease with the company. Franchisee will run the show. Now the business model in this COFO will obviously be depending upon different companies' priority, but prima facie, the rent belongs to a company. All the operating expenses, which includes the capex, salary, electricity, housekeeping expenses, security expenses, stationery, postage, telephone, internet, all those expenses will belong to the franchisee. Against which company gives a certain commission on the secondary sales. These two models are clear?
Yes.
Anybody wants to understand in detail or any questions?
Sir, can you give some examples of COFO?
So COFO will mean basically that, for example, if I were to talk about Benetton, I have taken a store, let's say in Jaipur, MI Road. I liked the property. I thought it's a great facade, great visibility, and size of the store is good, 3,000 square feet. I will take that store on lease from the landlord. I have secured that particular piece of real estate for me. Now I am asking one of my franchisee to invest on the capital expenditure, which basically means only the rental part will belong to me. The capital expenditure, which basically means the entire investment to commission the store, furniture, fixture, stocks, inventory, POS, all and sundry investment will be done by the franchisee. The manpower expenses will belong to franchisee. Only the rent will be paid by the company, against which I will make him a commission on the secondary sales that he does. Secondary sale is something which we will do from the store. I don't bill him. This is, tell me if it's beyond usual levels. I can tone down the language further. Here the secondary billing will mean that the particular franchisee is not buying stock from me. The stock has been given on the consignment model. Consignment basically means that the ownership of the stock still belongs to the company. Franchisee doesn't need to invest on the stock. He only pays me a bank guarantee or a security deposit towards it. All he needs to do is invest on the store making. That's his problem. Stock and rent belongs to company. That's how the COFO model works. As the name also suggests, this will not have huge margins, but this takes back two important expense or two important risk from the franchisee. First risk, that he doesn't need to pay the rentals. I'm sure all of you will appreciate that the biggest cost in today's business is the rental, which normally hovers between 15 to 20% of the revenue that you do. But in today's world, because the sales are cannibalized by opening one or the other store next to each other, this also goes to 30-35%. So this particular cost goes off from the franchises bucket. The second biggest cost is stock. Now you will know that if I have bought 100 pieces, all 100 will not be sold. There are good chances that 30 will remain unsold. So what happens to that inventory? If I have bought it, it will be a loss to me, right? In case of a COFO store, that scenario never happens. Company has to bear all the cost. Franchisee only gives a security deposit, which normally ranges from 1,000 rupee per square feet to 2,000 rupees square feet, depending upon the kind of business you are into. But the biggest headache of inventory and rent is taken care of by the company. So this is the safest model for a franchisee. At the same time, in terms of returns, he doesn't enjoy too much. Is it clear now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The last one is franchisee owned, franchisee operated. So whatever franchisee didn't do in COFO, he has to do everything in FOFO, which means entire investment, whether it is capital expenditure, whether it is investment on the inventory, staff, everything belongs to the franchisee. All he has to do is run the show, but against which he earns a handsome margin, which is almost 2 2.5 to 3 times of the margin what a COFO franchisee will earn. So that's how the business model works in India. Any questions? Should we go ahead?
Yeah, please.
So there are 4 key profitability indicators: gross margin, rent to revenue ratio, sell-throughs, OPEX or operating expenses. Any idea what is the gross margin? In fact, we have Rajesh who is expert in this, and if he wants to comment, I'm more than happy.
So, sir, without just the difference between the buying price and selling price, so that is gross margin. If I take in consideration the taxes and all the overhead cost, then that will be my net margin. So gross margin for me is simply my difference between selling price, cost price and selling price.
Absolutely. So I don't think anything to be added. It's a perfect definition of a gross margin. Is it clear to everybody, or you want more detail on this? Because these are the words which you will again face in the real world. Whatever I told you was the preliminary exercise of or preliminary glimpse of what you would face in the real world. But these are few specific jargons. Again, I have tried to keep it simple. You will definitely face this kind of thing in your real business. So as Rajesh said, gross margin is nothing but the difference between cost and sales. This is the money available to you to serve all your expenses. For example, if the MRP is 100 rupee and your cost is 40 rupee, the margin, the gross margin that you are making is 60 rupee here. With that 60 rupee, you will have to fund rentals, you have to give salaries, electricity bill, and all the operating expenses. Whatever is left after giving all this thing is something which is called net margin, or your net profit, or net margin, or in the typical technical words, it is called EBITDA, EBITDA. You might have in your finance class, you might have come across this particular word. After taking care of all operating expenses, what you are left with is the EBITDA or the gross margin or the net margin. Clear? Guys, ask questions here because this could be important for you in corporate world. Then nobody will actually try taking all the pain to explain these things to you.
If anybody is asking now, ask questions.
Cool. So next is rent to revenue ratio. This is simple. Whatever sales I am doing, it can be done at 3 levels. First is MRP, which is the maximum retail price. Second is the realized sale, which is the MRP minus discount. And third is net sales, which is MRP minus tax minus discount. So depending upon your specific organization, you calculate this ratio and see whether I am profitable or not. So at a realized sale, the typical rent to revenue ratio has to be 20%, which basically means if your MRP is 100, you give 20 rupee discount, your realized sale is 80 rupee. On that 80 rupee, what is the rent that you want to pay? So if you are paying 16 rupee, your rent to revenue ratio here becomes 20%, which is the ideal rent to revenue should operate with. Third is sell through. This is the amount of product that you bought and how much you sold. This is what we discussed during the COFO exercise.
Yes.
OPEX is nothing but operating expenses. This includes all those things through which you run your show. This includes rent, salary, housekeeping, security, telephone expenses, postage and stationery, and so on and so forth. Under these four pillars, the entire retail business operates. Any doubts all this while? Anything that you would like me to address further?
So can you elaborate more about rent to revenue ratio and sell through?
Yeah. So as I said, for example, if you are making a sale of 100 rupee, and today's reality is that discount has to be given without a doubt. So let's say if I give 20% discount, my rent to revenue ratio can be calculated on this 80 rupee also, depending upon my organization's priority, or it can be also calculated on 100 rupee, which is the MRP. So if you choose to calculate on 80 rupee, which is MRP minus discount, and if you end up paying 16 rupee as your rental, So your rent to revenue ratio will be 20%, 16 on 80. That's how you will calculate your rent to revenue ratio.
But sir, how this is indicating about the profits? Sorry to
No problem.
ask again. Yeah.
No. Ask. I would love as many questions as you can. So, do you remember the discussion what we had about gross margin and net margin?
Yes, sir.
So, for example, again in the language of 100 rupee, if I have sold, if the sold MRP was 100 rupee, my cost was 40 rupee. So I was left with 60 rupee, right?
Right.
In that 60 rupee, if I am paying, let's say 30 rupee rent, so I am now left with 30 rupee to cover all the other expenses. Now, this is a very scary situation to be in, because end of the day, if I pay 30 rupee towards rental, I am left with another 30 to meet all the expenses, and I also need to book an operating profit. So the lower the rent to revenue ratio, for example, if 30 becomes 15, I am automatically left with 45 rupee for me to cater to all the expenses and also to meet my profit targets. That's how rent to revenue ratio will be important.
Okay, sir. So the lower the rent to revenue ratio is, the higher the profit.
5%. FMCG, like large hypermarkets, they wouldn't go beyond 1 to 2%. So different industry will have different percentage revenues. Clear? So that's all from my side, guys. This is my contact info. If anybody wishes to contact me, these are my credentials, my email, my cell, and the LinkedIn.
One question which we would like to ask is the retail is going to be affected after this COVID?
It will be affected in a very, very significant manner. The way we have now, so there is something called business continuity plan. The way we have now structured Benetton's business plan is for the next 6 months minimum, if we were doing 100 rupee business, we will only end up doing 35 to 40 rupee business. So that's the severity of retail. It will lead to lot many business which will perish after once the lockdown is over, because small businesses will not be able to survive unless and until landlords comes to their rescue and say that, okay, I waive off your rentals so that you don't have to meet. So when I was discussing about rent to revenue, this is where the picture comes in. My revenue from 100 became 40, but if my rent continues to become 20, it will be a very, very difficult situation to be in. So for in all likelihood, very difficult times ahead, especially for the retail industry, because the consumption story in any market rides on only a couple of things. The first is, what is the market sentiment? Whether consumer confidence is high or low. What is the disposable income available? Now, most of the companies have announced pay cuts or headcount reduction, which basically means if I was earning 100 rupee, I might be earning 70 rupee now. With that 70 rupee, I have to run the entire show. I have to make my basic expenses, whether it is my house EMI or my car EMI. Then whatever is left with will be spent on retail spends or discretionary spends. So it will be a very, very tough for all the retailers. At least next 6 to 8 months will be very tough. Small companies will have very, very tough time to be in unless the government pitches in and gives a great support to that.
Sir, I have a simple concern which I really want to discuss with you.
Please, please.
Sir, since this is a condition, जो अभी scenario चल रहा था, COVID is impacting whole world. Now, retail sector is basically, let's suppose if we are discussing about Reliance store, which are an offline retail store, will it impact purchase and sale by the consumer, because a lot of the customers will not go to the retail stores. They will prefer from buying online, either from a Flipkart or an Amazon.
Yeah.
Will it impact, and what will be the strategies a retail store can adapt?
So thanks, that's a great question. So yes, you are right. The majority of business will shift into e-commerce because of 3 reasons. The first and foremost, it's ease of convenience, and that was the riding factor earlier also. Second, now consumers are paranoid. Why I'm using the word paranoid and not concerned is because the way corona is spreading, we have 33,500 cases as we speak today in India. Every day this curve is increasing. So people are paranoid about their safety, and they don't want to venture out just for shopping on some apparel or some watch or some footwear. All they would want is, even if I have a grave reason to shop, I would rather go to an Amazon or Flipkart and allow them to come to my doorstep, thereby reducing the maximum exposure to outside. Because once I venture out as a consumer, there are multiple touch points, whether it's my lift button, whether it's my car or the parking lot, the door handle of my shop, everything will come into my usual arena of suspicion, and that will not allow me to do this kind of fearless shopping. Now, coming to the second part of the question, what strategy can we make? The only thing what we can do is keep our retail environment as safe, as secure as possible. For example, I could share the Benetton video with all of you on the Facebook. We opened our Goa store 4 days back. The store was completely sanitized with the best quality disinfectant. We ensured that the PPE, all the PPE equipments were worn by my staff. They were wearing a headgear of shoe cover, mask, gloves, and also provided the same thing for all the customers who entered in. So you have to reassure the customer that if you are shopping with me, your shopping experience will be safe and sound. You can be rest assured that no such infection will happen inside the store. Secondly, in terms of discounting, that could be a core driver of the strategy as of now. Yeah, exactly. Because the disposable income has gone down, you will have to see that the affordability factor remains relevant to the consumer. If you were selling at 100 rupee earlier, you will have to see that with the average pay cut of around 10 to 30% in market, you have to see that the affordability factor doesn't go beyond their usual limits, and hence the discounting will become a real-time strategy. Marketing, instead of encouraging a customer to buy, you have to reassure the customer that the bad times are over, good times are coming by, and both of us will win this battle together through joint efforts.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question.
Please.
Sir, as you said, strategy would be an important factor in these very, very difficult times of COVID. So, what do you think, what do you want to draw on the aspect of how the leadership would impact, or how the leadership down the line, Benetton have got great leaders like you. So, how leadership would impact in these critical times, or how leadership crisis would be, maintained by the companies?
So, amazing question. See, leadership, as you know, the definition of leadership is absolutely become more relevant. Yes. A leader is someone who will actually hold you when you are in troubles.
Yeah.
And not push you down the corner because you are not having a good day.
Yeah.
A leader has to ensure that the morale and the motivation of the team remains at all-time high.
Yes.
They shouldn't get swayed away by the pay cuts, because at the end of the day, pay cut is a reality.
Yes.
It will happen everywhere sooner or later. But at the same time, people have to, actually the leader has to ensure that their morale and the motivation of their team remains at all-time high. They shouldn't feel discouraged with the lower response from the consumer.
Yes.
There will be hard decisions, and everybody as a team has to be prepared to embrace it rather than reject it. Appraisals will become a story of the past. The key question today is whether I can survive or not. In this moment, when the survival of the fittest will become a question, a leader has to ensure that he holds the hand tightly, he carries all the people along and wipes out all those tears who will follow in due course, and ensure that they do not fall apart.
Thank you, sir. Very rightly said.
Thank you.
So I have a question to ask. Hello.
Please go ahead.
Sir, as you have said earlier, if you look at the present scenario, the condition will going to be a little bad in the future, and the purchasing power in the market will going to reduce.
Yes.
So company will go for it will definitely affect the pricing policies of the company. And as you said, if the product is being currently sold at 100, it will going to be sold at a lower price in the future scenario.
Yes.
But the thing is that the expenses for a company will not going to go down. The operating expenses, the salary, staff, the rent and all will be the same only. Then so if we can assume the company in the future go for the low margin, the company which were operating at high margin?
Yeah, so you're right in terms of the expenses and the revenue profile. Revenue will definitely go down. At the same time, now I can tell you again about Benetton, what we are doing. So the team which I head, the business development team, my team has negotiated, or rather got a saving of 10.5 crores in last 1.5 months by renegotiating all the contracts with all our landlords. We have requested them for a complete waiver during the lockdown period and also 50% rental during the next 6 months. So thereby impacting the most critical cost, which was rental, we have moved that to 50% level. Basis which what happens, your operating cost, if it goes down by 50% and revenue goes down by 60%, still the delta remains at 10% only. Sales will definitely be low, but if you are able to drive down your cost to at least a considerable level, then that is something which will be a recipe for the success here.
Okay, sir.
Vivek, I have got a question because the students were having so much of apprehension with respect to summer internship and the placements. So what is your guidance to them with respect to the areas in which they have to focus? Because since the company themselves are facing so much of problem, many companies are really apprehensive regarding giving students with an opportunity for summer internship. So what should be their focus upon? Because if the students are not getting a summer internship opportunity, because companies are a bit skeptical about their own existence, so they are like more skeptical about giving opportunity for students for summer internship. So what is your guidance to them? What they should focus upon at this particular difficult time?
I'll just have to take a second. Laptop is getting discharged. I just need to plug in and then I will come back. Just give me a moment, please.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, Dr. John.
So the question which I was asking was, what should be the focus area of the students?
In terms of summer internship?
Yeah, in terms of a summer internship, because companies are a bit skeptical because they are not, they are revising the policy with respect to whether we should go ahead with interns or not. So what should the students focus upon?
See, that's a tricky question to answer because it has got two sides to it. First, summer internship is a reality for every MBA student because that gives you a complete glimpse on how corporate works, and also it's a very strategic part of your curriculum. At the same time, if you were to look at the current structure, the way economy is shaping up, now manpower reduction will be something which will be a key reality in today's market. My sincere advice to all the students would be to first develop yourself as much as you can and develop in terms of the core skills which will be required in the corporate world. Just to give you a very basic example, which I feel today I am still lagging, is the command on Excel sheets. I am afraid that the basic tools like an Excel is something which is required at a proficient level, but at the same time, you will find most of the people struggling. So if you are not able to secure a summer internship, don't get disheartened. I can tell you, I can have one more session with all of you and I can tell you the life skills which will be required to survive in the next 10 years or 20 years for you. Because that is something which will actually come handy. Even if you don't have a summer internship, there could be a lot of projects that you could also do in. For example, if you want to do research on the COVID impact on Indian retail, I mean, I would request all of you to actually grab this topic, research on internet, interview people over telephone, over Skype, and try getting the nerve of the market. That could itself be a topic for you. I mean, don't depend on an organization to provide topic and summer internship. Change the definition of the topic. End of the day, what you do in a summer internship is to research, right?
Yes.
You research and try to get a wholesome understanding about the company. by interacting with its employee, with its policymakers. Can you do it online? Like this, for example, if I were to make this presentation, I have picked up a lot of data from internet. I have researched on this topic. If you don't get a summer internship, can you prepare? Can your teachers, can the alumni, can they help you in getting those topics and make you research on these topics? End of the day, idea is to sharpen my brain. That's the whole central idea of a summer internship. Yes, it is an academic requirement without a doubt. But what I personally felt after doing the summer internship is the idea is to grab how a corporate works. Idea is to own up my consumer management or my business skills. Idea is to also see how the real world operates and not how it operates on books. You can very well do this by challenging yourself, giving a project to yourself. Do online research till the time we are under lockdown. Post lockdown, I am sure we have a great alumni base. Everybody will come forward to help you, including me. And I ensure you whatever possible help I can extend through all my previous contacts. I have worked with Arvind, Madura, Titan, Fab India, and Sony. I can definitely help you out in getting a summer internship in these kind of companies.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So I'm really happy and I'm really thankful to Vivek sir for sparing so much of time. It has it's almost 1.5 hours. We were not able to understand the enormity of the time that you were spending with us. Thanks a lot for sparing your valuable knowledge with us. It is indeed a pleasure for all of us to listen to such alumni who are having vast experience. I look forward for more sessions from your side.
Sure, anytime.
I'm also having Rajesh sir, Amitabh sir also on the line. They are on the mute mode, but I will be requesting them also to come up with such sessions. It is going to be a very interactive session for the students and they will be enriched with respect to your knowledge as well.
So, ma'am, you can fix up something on next Saturday or on any Saturday. So my experience, Vivek sir has been mostly into premium segment. So I've been mostly last 16 years into food retail and cash and carry. So now I am with a company known as Udaan. So if you decide the topic, okay, and then we can have a session. But it should be
one of the guys who is very, very intelligent, very sharp, and I'm sure people will definitely get benefited from him.
Okay, I will be requiring your phone numbers in order to fix the intricacies of this particular webinar. So Rajesh sir, I will be requesting that if you can share me with your number, it will be a real good thing.
Sure, sir, I will do that. And one thing more I'd like to add. So our sales in grocery, okay, that has gone up by almost 300%. So it is not everything is gloomy. In food retail and food wholesale B2B organized, the sales have gone up substantially because the normal distribution channel has collapsed. So, so that is the only segment in retail where still recruitment is happening, like JioMart is recruiting people left, right and center right now.
Okay.
So that is only the silver snake. Okay. So
but core area is shifting because I was also going through some research papers. So it has been said that even logistics is going to come up. E-commerce is going to come up in a very effective way.
After this lockdown has happened, earlier the vendor used to supply the stock to my warehouse. Now we are sending our truck and our driver and everything to the vendor's place. So a lot of changes is happening, but grocery, the basic stuff, only difference is that earlier where people were having Oreo biscuit, now they are going for the low end brand because they are not sure that till when they will be getting salary or so they have cut down on the spending, but food you can't stop.
Okay.
So you decide the topic as far as it is related to food retailing or wholesaling, and I'll be very much ready to do that. Okay.
Okay.
And as far as summer placement is concerned, I would request to start immediately because in last 3-4 days only, my company Udaan itself has cancelled summer internship for more than 90 people from IIMs alone.
Yes, I know. There are so many companies who are cancelling the summer internship.
Yes. So that has been converted to pre-placement order. That's a different thing. But nobody is going ahead with summer internship, right?
Yes.
That's where I said you guys have to redefine the way you would look at summer internship.
Yeah. So what Vivek sir told, you have to start immediately on your own inside the campus only. And, because if you still keep on waiting, then it will be too late.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
If you need evaluations, we'll be more than happy to do that.
Okay. Thanks a lot for sparing your valuable time. Thank you to all alumni, students, and faculty members. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Hope I didn't bore you with a lot of jam on detail.
It was a wonderful session.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.